What's good, y'all? It's your good sis Erica Vane coming to you right here on Erica Vane TV. In this video, I am going to be breaking down episode 5 of Euphoria. My God, those are the two words that I have for that. Literally, my summary. My God. But I also have one of my faves with me in this video, Naya, who is an super fan of Euphoria and what they are visually doing, what they're doing with story, and she's a perfect person to be in this video and help me break down episode 5 this week. We literally have a group chat and we could not stop talking about last night's episode. So without further ado, hey Naya. How is everybody doing? How are we doing? Because I literally started the episode off and then immediately got into our text like, so what is happening? How are you feeling after last night's episode?
Girl, I'm still processing that. I feel like every time we talk about it, I get chills because it's still wild. Episode was a lot,
Yeah.
probably one of the best thus far, I can say.
So the episode literally took us on, I feel like there was like 15 minutes before the literal credit or the title card Euphoria, and they really took their time with deep diving into what Rue is going through. What does a day in the life of this relapse actually look like? But then what does the day look like when she's confronted with the fact that she can't hide this anymore? So how did you feel about how they actually showed this first part before we even get to the Euphoria title screen? What did you think about that actual sequence and like watching her be confronted by her mom, spaz out, and all of the things that played out the way that they did?
It's crazy because I'm trying to figure out how episode 4 ended, and I don't think the way that episode 4 ended, we had any inkling that we were going to pick up in episode 5 the way that we did. I can't remember how we ended it, but it definitely, I think maybe it was a bit ambiguous, but I don't think that we had any preparation for what we were going to see in just the first 15 minutes before the title card even rolled through. But yeah,
Well, listen, there's something that I wanted to do. I wanted when Rue was putting her damn foot through that door.
Woo!
I wanted her black mama to go black mama on her. And I 100%, like, I think I tweeted this. Like, I know that this is completely the wrong answer, but I would not have known anything else to do but to swing back. Like, Rue was swinging, she was tearing stuff up, she was kicking holes in doors, she was jumping on people. Like, she was doing the absolute most, and something in me would have went, ding. That's it.
For
Like,
real. I don't. I agree. Yeah, it was, and I think you even see there's a moment where it does get physical, and there's a moment where the black mama does come out of her mother because it's just there's only so much that you can take, and she does like slap her. And I think what's funny is I think there's emotion to that as well because I think that Rue knows how to provoke,
she's so
especially
manipulative. She is
exactly.
crafty with her manipulation.
Yes, and I think for her, the only way to get out of this conversation is to be combative and to be extremely, in a place of trying to provoke. And because she's in this state of defense and desperation, she does not want to have this conversation. She doesn't want to have to come to terms with, you cannot keep doing this, under like in secret, like everyone knows, like, and you can't just keep doing this, um, behind closed doors. Everyone knows. So it's like her just being like, all right, well, I'm not trying to have this conversation, so I'm just gonna provoke like a mofo so I can get out of here.
She tried so many different tactics in that short span of the 15 minutes. So her initial thing was anger, and like she was trying to scare her mother into giving her the suitcase or to giving her what she wants. And then when her mother bucks back, like, I'm not afraid of you. Then she realizes that she got to shift a little bit. Then we get the crying and the woe is me. Then we get her trying to go to a please help me type of place. And honestly, I felt like that honestly, it was like you said, the whole 15 minutes was masterful. I think what was the most captivating of it was that they were able to layer in all of that authenticity of what it looks like within the addict and addict's mind, because while she is suffering right through this, I believe that we can call addiction a mental illness, but she's suffering through this, but she's still very much so cognizant enough to try to get what she wants, and she's relentless with trying to get what she wants. And while we are seeing her do this and trying to achieve this mission of where is this damn suitcase, then we're also still having to manage Gia, who's in the scene, her mom, who's in the scene, and then 7 minutes in, her mom clues us into like Rue is in the other room and Elliot is behind her. So I think that the thing that really captivated me the most was not only Zendaya and her performance of Rue and her like completely being unhinged and us seeing what that looks like, but then also me trying to keep up with the other people in the scene, like you said, and seeing how all of this lands on them. Because once she realized that she's not going to get her way, she results to me to complete emotional terrorism, and everybody gets a missile. She literally locks and loads on everybody, and while her mom and Jules get the bulk of it, everybody got hit at some point. And I'm just like, wow, you are so dropped in to this manufactured need. And I'm saying manufactured not because she can't control it, but because this is something that she has now put herself in her using, right?
Yeah.
You are so dropped into this that it is literally all of you all can be destroyed over me getting this thing. And that to me was just like, I was floored.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And there's like I'm thinking about it. There's one scene in particular where I felt like it was, and this just goes into just how much Zendaya embodied this episode. Just in all of her mannerisms, like she was truly unrecognizable. This was Rue at her darkest, at her lowest, and that was it. And there was one scene like so. I think it's obviously anger first, and then her mom basically is like, I'm not afraid of you. Like, you're not a good person, Rue. It's that scene, and you see like this change that happens. It's real subtle, but if you look at Zendaya's face, you look at Rue's face, there's like this smirk, and that's where I was like, oh, this is where the venom is gonna start to come in. This is where she's
Mm-hmm.
gonna just start hitting everybody just to get them out the way. And you just saw her
honestly, like episode 5, and we discussed this previously, but episode 5 literally put together all of the most powerful elements of storytelling and just executed them in the most beautiful way. So not only did Zendaya like completely disappear and Rue is there present, completely dropped in, but Sam was 100% in his writing bag. Like, I give him a hard time about different things that he does, but in this episode I didn't see not one miss. That script had to be tight because, like you said, her mannerisms, it all lined up with the dialogue, and just even like how they decided to pace and structure this, the way that things happen. They created such a beautiful roller coaster of like, this is what addiction actually looks like, and y'all about to feel all of it. Like, we're not even going to just tiptoe or like just give you a little taste. We're about to immerse you into it. And you're so right. It's the little nuances of that smirk. And then also what makes it even tougher to watch but keeps you fully engaged is because while we know she's having the seemingly manic episode that's brought on by her addiction, and she's saying all these things that we shouldn't necessarily believe or we can't trust, a lot of it was also laced in truth. How much of that "you are shit mom" really is like, has been sitting on the surface for her mother, has been sitting on the surface for her. Like, I have been wondering, how do we get from her father passing to her full-blown addiction? Because there's not enough context in there for me if this is the thing that actually started it. Where was your mother when you were grieving? And when she said that last night, like, while I know that I can't trust Rue as a reliable narrator and she out here set tripping, I also sat back like, well, did we do everything that we could do? You know? Not to say that, her addiction is her mom's fault at all, because I'm not saying that, but we haven't seen enough. And I think that that's also, to me, what made a lot of it so powerful. Like, when she was talking to Jules, she was coming for the jugular, but there was some truth in there that I have even said. Like, I literally did not want Jules and Rue to reunite this season because I felt like Jules was 100% knowledgeable about where Rue was, and she still left her anyway. And that had so much to do with the relapse. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think even you can see that there's a lot of underlying stuff between Rue and her mom, and like even I think that was clarified to me in that scene when she goes to Jada and she's like I have to be perfect, and then you have to be like 100% perfect. So God forbid you mess up and you're anything less than what she wants. So it's like the mom definitely, maybe hasn't been as present as she should be when it comes to Rue. And I mean, it's blowing back on Gia. So it's like, what Rue is saying can't be 100% false, and then with Jules too, it was like, yeah, a lot of it was laced in venom, but there was a lot that was in truth. And I think when it comes to Jules, there's a lot there that hasn't been ever really unpacked when it comes to the two of them having a conversation. It was Jules leaving Rue at the damn train station, and then we come back in season 2, and it's like, oh, I love you, let's be together, and nothing was ever really discussed or unpacked, and a lot of that Rue was still holding on to. So when she comes at Jules like that, and she says, "You don't love me, you just love to be loved," that's truth. And I think what was funny is I was,
So much truth.
it was truth. And I was on Twitter last night, and there was some discourse because I think people misconstrue, like, at the end of the day, no one hates any of these characters. Like, I think, I mean, well, with the exception, we have
Nate Jacobs.
Jacobs.
Don't run into me in the back alley, bro. I'm just saying.
I'm not crying no tears if they were to disappear tomorrow. But in terms of, like, the characters that we know, like, and we do love, like Cassie and like a Jules, where we definitely have rooted for them in the past, and no one's saying that we hate like Cassie or Jules. We don't like their actions, and I think it's important, as much as we want a character to win, we have to hold everyone accountable. And Cassie has made questionable, reckless choices this season, and Jules has made her fair share
Yeah.
You
And
know?
and I think that like we don't know enough about the mom, like I said, to really know how much of that is grounded in truth. But there was so much truth told in the venom that was spewed at Jules. And honestly, the audience has the benefit of knowing Jules and Elliot's relationship and how it has grown very, very quickly. And it literally looks like you love to be loved. You suck the energy out of people because you had no rap for Elliot at first. Like, you didn't even want to get to know him. You didn't care what he had going on. But the moment he was kicking good vibrations and like that, I felt like there's this energy or this life force there, you attach and then you make it a thing for you. And I ain't gonna hold you. Like, Rue, you're set tripping, but we were dead on about Jules. Dead on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like it's ironic for Jules to be the one to then, tell her mom and really be the catalyst into um the secret being out, like, her relapsing, her mom and her sister and everyone really knowing the truth. Like Jules being the one to burst that bubble when it's like, for real, it's like a lot of some of my pain here is your fault. And it's like the betrayal of that, like it's you of all people. And then obviously what we, the audience, are privy to know too, about Jules and Elliot, what just happened between the two of them. The last episode, it's like this is a lot of complication. Jules being the one, like Elliot telling Jules, and then Jules being the one to ultimately tell her mother, which no one is crucifying Jules. Her mom needed to know.
Yes.
This needed to be done, and Jules did what she was supposed to do, regardless of the relationship between Rue and Jules. It needed to happen. Um, but we can't lie and say that Jules doesn't have a role to play in some of Rue's just chaos, just in her life and her mind and her heart. So that's why I say, like, no one's saying we hate Jules and saying that she's somehow worse than what we've seen from Nate or Cal, but she definitely has her role to play. Now, none of these characters are perfect, so we just have to hold. If we're gonna hold Rue accountable, then we need to hold everyone else accountable because none of these kids are perfect, and we've seen them make mistakes. And when it comes to Jules and Rue, there's a lot of codependency there. There's a lot of um, toxic, behaviors that have taken place in their relationship. And I think it all came out, obviously, in this scene where Rue is on the full, just on her full emotional rampage. And I think that's why it was such a brilliant scene and beautifully written, is that a lot of things were happening at one time. Centering around Rue and this, outbursts, all these outbursts. It's like everything was centering around that, but it was weaved together so in such a well done way that it all felt connected and it all felt like it resonated, because it's like it felt like a culmination, this episode, of a lot of things from the past 2.5 seasons thus far.
Yeah, truly. And I want to go back to because you touched on that when you first started to speak about the first 15 minutes, and you were like, we didn't anticipate this. Like, they didn't basically leave episode 4 in a way that we would know that this was coming. All we knew, like, we had those montages of every single solo character. I remember Cassie and them flowers, and I was like, what are we doing? Okay, we're going artsy. Okay, cool. But we did get left with Elliot telling Jules what's going on because he feels so deeply for her now that he doesn't want to do these drugs and he wants to tell her the truth. And honestly, I thought it was powerful that was the choice that Sam had because um I don't know why, but for the life of me, I would have never thought that Jules was actually going to tell her mom. And part of me feels like that is like my judgment, I guess, of Jules, because I feel like Jules does kind of do what's best for her. And I do, like I said, a lot of the stuff that Rue was saying it has so much truth laced in it. I do feel like she could have she didn't know season 1, but she could have said something before, and I feel like she, not intentionally maybe, but capitalized off of Rue's codependency and addictive personality. That to me was a thing that really drew Jules to Rue. So I was very surprised that it turned out that she actually said something. So I was like, okay, so that you do actually love her because you did what was best and not what was going to be the most comfortable. You weren't concerned about if she hated you, this, that, and the third. Like you actually did what was the best thing. I was a little taken aback when Elliot was like he should not have ever said anything, and I felt like he really did mean that. How did you feel when he said that?
Like I was just annoyed with Elliot. I think just because I felt like there was a bit of hypocrisy there. I feel like when it comes to Elliot, and I'm not putting the blame on anyone because Rue's addiction is hers to own and hers alone, right? But I feel like Rue and Elliot were brought together in the same place, and I feel like because Elliot maybe appears to be more of a high functioning addict, and he has a little bit more awareness. At the end of the day, bro, you knew that she was down bad, and you, I think, liked that connection that you two shared, and you know, you liked that connection that you two shared, and we're comfortable with that, right? And I think it wasn't until things started to get like messy and entangled when it came to Rue and Jules, where you felt like, okay, this is getting messy, and I know this thing that Jules doesn't, and maybe I should say so. I don't know. I feel like a part of it maybe was, him telling Jules was maybe obviously the best thing for Rue, but I also just was annoyed that he was the one to really just say something, just because, and the reason is because of what we know happened with him and Jules, like, and the thing, and what was going on with him and Jules behind Rue's back. It was all just very twisted and convoluted in a way that him telling Jules should have been something like, okay, good. But for me, it felt like kind of just felt gross, just because we knew what was going on between Jules and Elliot
Mm.
behind her back. So it felt like it's kind of like, okay, like you told Jules, but like, you know, okay, like look in the mirror, dude. Like you're not any better than she is. Like why don't you, worry about your own stuff because you're not any better than her. You guys are both addicts. So it just kind of, I was annoyed with Elliot that he was even there. But him saying that, him saying like just acknowledging, it was never my place. It was like, oh shoot, okay, so maybe you do like you have some kind of awareness of just how deep and how like dark this is, and maybe your role in it, because you definitely haven't really helped anything. I mean, not to Rue's knowledge, but
Yeah.
you definitely have made it a lot more convoluted and messy. So
I don't necessarily know if I buy the whole it's not my place. Like I didn't like him basically like throwing his hands up so quickly, and I'm just like I thought at least initially that he actually did really care about Rue. So like him being so quick to backpedal, I was kind of annoyed with that. But I do feel what you were saying because it's definitely complicated. He has greater feelings brewing for Jules, and they have what they have going on. I'm actually glad that he did tell her because he doesn't actually know her mom to actually say something. I feel like there is nobody else that was better suited to actually say something than him, especially after he basically brought her ass back to life in episode 1. It's like
right,
you literally have been doing it with her, so you're literally the person to bring this to whoever's attention that is going to actually intervene. Especially because you haven't taken any steps to intervene yourself. Like I was like looking at him. I think it was episode 4 maybe, but Rue leaves the bump for him in the bathroom and he just brushes it away, and I'm just like, but we're not going to try to get her to stop. We just going to stop. Like so that might also tie into some of the things that you're feeling about Elliot. I had a good feeling about him when she first met him, even though he's struggling with addiction as well, but with how he responded in this episode, I was just like, all right, dude, you're giving coward vibes now, and I can't really mess with that because you were seeming so fearless before and so confident.
yeah, I think yeah, it's maybe I'm trying to figure out like the feeling. I just felt annoyed, like I don't know, like just him being there, and I felt like when she, just to be funny, when she like mushed his face, I was like, yes, do that for me, because I was just like, dude, like why are you here? Like I know, for some reason him being there just made me feel like he, I don't know, maybe because
Mm.
he's more aware than Rue has been. And it's like, no, y'all are in the same place. Y'all are both doing drugs. Y'all both are so in it. And it's probably maybe even a little bit worse for you, Elliot, because you're so in it that you can have a, some kind of wherewithal about what you're doing and where you're at and what's going on, that it's like for him to just be there at that so-called like intervention, so to speak, it was just kind of like, okay, you told Jules, but I feel like even he told Jules because of Jules, not necessarily for the benefit of Rue, but because him and Jules were getting closer and he's catching feelings at this point. It's like, oh well, let me tell you because I care about you, not so much as like Rue has a real problem and I know that you love her, and so I'm telling you because it's what's best for her, which is why I just
Mm.
felt icky that he was there and like he just had a place, and it was just like, okay, dude, whatever.
Yeah, you make a good point there. I want to get into another person who was there that we didn't actually get to hear a ton from, but I feel like it's probably being impacted the most in the room. But before I do, Nia Love, thank you so much for posting your comment. Nia Love says those first 15 minutes was insane. Zendaya bodied that performance at the end of the day. Rue is responsible for her addiction, but her support system sucks besides Ali. Besides Ali, whom she has already torpedoed that relationship with because she was set tripping when she first got the damn suitcase. But we're going to definitely go there. You also said that I think Elliot wants to be loved in the same way that Jules wants to be loved. We don't know a lot about his character, but it feels like there's a reason they were drawn to each other. I feel that. I feel
Yeah.
that. Is he a leech too? Because I'm sorry, but Loki, I do feel like Jules is a leech in this moment.
No. we not trying to doubt, talk bad about Jules, but I mean, we gotta call a spade a
We
spade.
gotta call a spade a
Leeches,
spade.
leeches. Yeah.
But let's go to one of the real victims of all of
Oh,
this, Gia.
yes.
Because even when I was going through and like Naya and I were prepping to have this talk, I totally forgot about Gia. It was so quick, but I was going back through and pulling screenshots of her, and my heart. I know these are fictional characters, y'all, but we are already invested. So we talk about them like they real people. You just need to go with it, okay?
Period.
My heart, like every time I see Storm Reed on screen in a Euphoria setting, I just want to burst out in tears. The havoc that this menace Rue is wreaking on her little sister's life, she does not deserve it. This episode literally starts off with her mom doing the confrontation, and then she instantly goes to Gia and blames Gia and like flips. Meanwhile, Gia is holding the secret that you manipulated her into not actually talking to anybody about, which would be in your best interest. However, she has the conflict of wanting to be a supportive, loving sister and to have your affections, and to also try to think of what would be best for you. And in the moment, she decided that maybe letting you smoke a little weed because you lied to her would have been the best thing to keep the peace, but then also keep you safe if you felt like that's what you needed to maintain a certain level of sobriety. And the fact that she instantly flips and gives Gia no benefit of the doubt, I was just like, throw the whole Rue away for nothing else other than the like terrorism that you are inflicting upon Gia. She does not deserve.
No. Yeah. Gia, oh my lord, my sweet little petal. And I feel like it's crazy because I feel like Gia is often so forgotten and so just like, I think we as an audience, so much is going on with these characters that we kind of just push Gia to the background, but she is being affected truly the most by Rue and her addiction. And I mean, God, like, for God's sake, she found her sister when she overdosed. Like, that is some trauma that is there and it's deep. And I don't think they've ever really touched on it after that, or her mom has ever really given Gia the space to deal with that. No one's ever really given Gia the space to really process the fact that no, I almost like saw my sister die because of these drugs. And yeah, I can only imagine just the like. I mean, you can see the turmoil and the anguish in Storm Reed's portrayal during that whole 15 minutes, and even like throughout the whole episode. And I'm like, that girl is tired, and I'm tired for Gia. And I really hope that we do like maybe get
She is tired, and honestly, in watching the scenes, like after we get past the title card and we in the car trying to take her to the emergency room with no child locks on, ma'am, why aren't there any child locks on? You have Rue in your back seat. But I digress. I feel like going back and just watching Gia in those scenes, we see the last little bits of her, for lack of a better word, caring, because she's going to always care, but I can see something coming in Gia's future where she releases Rue. I could see, like, in Storm Reed's portrayal, I felt like I was watching her process, like, she's talking about death, maybe she should die. Like, when will all this end? Like, all of the things I could only imagine happening, and I could totally see her getting to a point of releasing Rue and all of her bullshit, and starting to build up a wall that protects her from all of this that she's being afflicted from Rue. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think we see that, and like, so it's sort of, they're in the car, her and her mom. It's, at night, they're trying to drive around and find her, and you see that Gia's on her phone, and her mom's like, can you, like, please get off your phone and help me find your sister? I think you see there her starting, like, the shutdown that's happened throughout the course of this episode, because I think, like you said, I think, obviously there's no dialogue, but I think you just see Gia start to, I think, really process, oh, my sister this is really, really bad, and I don't know, I can't help her anymore, mom can't help her anymore, I don't even think rehab can help her anymore. And I think it's not said, but I feel like when you were talking about it just now, I feel like all of that might have been going on in her mind. Like, we've done rehab, we've done the hospital thing, and I think, her mom suggesting, taking her to the ER, detoxing, and I think Gia's probably just like, we've done this before, and if it didn't work the first time, then I'm not sure what else we can do. And I think that's, I wonder if that's all going on internally, and then you get to that scene in the car, and I think that's where Gia completely, I think, is in the moment of just shut down, like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, you're on your own, mom, like, I can't do this anymore. And her being on the phone, I think, is a symbol of just her just being, like, probably at her wit's end when it comes to Gia. And then I think even you see her mom at the end of the episode is waiting for her. You don't see, Gia.
Exactly.
Her mom. And I think that might be a symbol too, that Gia's probably just checked out at this point, when it comes to Rue and being a source of light for Rue, in this time. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think in putting myself into Gia's shoes and watching that, I felt like me paying attention to her became a benchmark of, like, how bad is it? Because the first 15 minutes feels very bad, right? But then she gets into the car and she's like, okay, we're going to go to the emergency room, and we're driving along and they're talking, and it's like, okay. But then you get to see her start to cycle through again. I can't do this. I won't do this. Gia really became a benchmark of, like, how bad it is, and, like, watching her process and like low-key give up is like, once Gia hits rock bottom and really doesn't give up anymore, then that we're pretty much upon, like, we walked into almost the land of no return. And it was so scary and hurtful to, like, watch her get to that point. And then I think what is so masterful about the episode is because we see that we have this subsidiary character in Gia where we can actually gravitate towards that. And that's what I, like, drew to. Like, I'm always, when I'm watching these shows, I'm looking for a compass in the show to help me understand how I'm supposed to feel and what I'm supposed to be thinking about. And Gia became that for me for the first third of the episode. But then when Rue gets out this car and we have those insane traffic scenes, and she's like Rue is about to die so many times in this episode, and I'm like, my heart cannot take this. What are you actually doing? But, like, watching that, we almost see a handoff because we get to see her run to Cassie and Lexi's house. And then that's we see, we don't see Gia anymore until like the moment where it's like, help me look for your sister, but then also at the end where she's not there. So to me, there was like a handoff there in the moment of like all of what transpires there. And I think what was so masterfully done about this episode is that because there were so many things going on, he still had to compartmentalize all of the pockets of people and their stories and how they fit into the overall story of Rue and this addiction. And will it take her life? Will it destroy her? Will it destroy her family? But aside from that, could it also destroy a lot of other people? And that is a perfect segue into, what actually happened at Cassie and Lexi's house. Which was good. Honestly, Sam, shout out to you because it was perfectly timed. It was perfectly placed. I spent so much time not breathing for like the first 20 minutes of this episode. And then when we get to Cassie and Lexi's house, you start to like can calm down and settle a bit. And then once she outs Cassie, it's cackle time for me. It's like the only laughs that I had throughout the whole episode. What did you think, Naya? It's definitely a safe space.
And you're like, okay, but then you realize, she's just going anywhere she can get get the next high, so it's like, what's the natural, it's not Jules, right? It's not her sister and it's not Jules, and who's after them? Lexi. So, going to Lexi and trying to lean on Lexi to get whatever she can, and then as soon as she comes down the stairs and you see them all gathered, it's like, oh Lord, I didn't know what was gonna happen, but I felt like this is where Rue goes into the attack mode, where it's just like, all right, now y'all trying to do this to me again, okay, and then having Cassie come out coming out the cut in the corner with her little space bun, giving us the baby voice, like the inspirational, it's gonna be all right, just take it one day at a time, and you just see.
Just take it one day at a time, and then a beat, another beat, another beat, and then Rue, like, it's she. And the crazy thing is, Rue is definitely still on attack or the defense, but she's a lot more subdued than she was. So then there's almost like a, hey, how long you and Nate been? What? And even that, it goes back to the devices at her disposal to still get what she wants. She's trying to get what she wants. Now she starts to get a little bit more, her pursuit of her goals gets complicated when she starts to feel the effects of her withdrawal. But even the outing of Cassie, it's literally a strategic tactic that she's 100% cognizant of. She's not floating. She ain't no zombie. She's literally being very strategic in that moment of like, let's go to the emergency room. Your mom knew you was going to be here. You're hunched or you're sitting down because you're in pain. And you know what? Let's go. We can't go just yet because Cassie is fucking Nate. truly was. And y'all, I was literally mid voice note to Naya when it came on my screen. And Naya can literally vouch and tell y'all, I cackle. I was like, what? On the voice note, I could not believe it. It was such a great comedic breath of fresh air, but then also still became a thing that helped push the story along because we knew that it was coming out, right? Like it had to come out. They've been doing this since episode 1. Cassie's falling deeper and deeper and deeper into love with this raggedy boy. Like I just don't even understand what is happening there. And in releasing that bit of information, which is going to completely blow up the friend group, but still in the context of Rue having one of her darkest moments with her addiction and being confronted by it, it almost gives you these two big, like, colossal problems to deal with, and you gotta pick. And then I also love that they use, like, Sam made that a comedic moment too, of like, okay, that's cool that she's freaking so and so, but like this is the real point at hand, so if y'all gonna fuss about this, y'all need to take it outside. And Rue is able to, within that part of the scene, manipulate even more to keep it going, because then we get the whole Maddy of Rue, how long? Oh, it was New Year's, and all of that, which creates an additional diversion to allow her to run out and continue her antics while she basically leaves Troy in destruction. This whole like thing.
Just drops a big ass bomb. Is like, y'all go deal with this. I'm about to go to the next house and call some more. I mean, it was just brilliant. And then when I think, like, everybody in that scene, you saw every character highlighted, and it wasn't big, but you had like Cat's there. Everyone's there, and everyone's reaction is different. And I think what I loved, like, about Maddy too, is I think in the beginning, you're sort of like, at least I thought that Maddy was gonna be like this mean girl, and like, might have been a bit of an antagonist for Rue. But I think you start to see in this episode that there is sort of some connection with Maddy and Rue, which I would love to touch on in the future. But even, like, I think it's just a testament to Maddy too, even though she knows, like, everyone knows that Rue has relapsed at this point, and they know that she is, an addict. Maddy can look at Rue's face and be like, she's not lying about this. And Rue, how long? And it was just like, every character in that scene did what they were supposed to do, and it was just, it's the brilliance of Sam's writing for this episode, that he was able to push another storyline forward while still focusing on Rue and the aftermath of this, and the heat and the real heat and darkness of her addiction. And I mean, Sam was in his bag this entire episode. I have no complaints.
The entire one.
Perfect chef's kiss.
Literally. And even going to your point of like there being a connection, because you're not necessarily always sure because they don't interact as much with Maddy and Rue. Lexi said nothing in the scene, but you could see when she registers like what's actually happening. She knows pretty much from the jump when Rue comes in the house talking about where's the bathroom, what's happening. And you can see, like, when you go back and watch, you can see how Lexi moves throughout the scene, and she falls back because she's overwhelmed by the colossal act that's happening right now. And then once the bomb of like Cassie and Nate goes off, it's like more than too much. But I think that speaks to also the connection that Rue has with Lexi, and like with all of them, they literally all have some kind of connection to Rue, which you're right isn't actually so clear. Like I feel like they touched upon it in the last episode when they all came into the bathroom, so I don't even know if it was Maddy or if it was Lexi that was like, "Are you on drugs again?" And she's like, "Oh, I just smoked a little weed." And everybody's like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like that little scene, I felt like they were trying to give us a little something in reference to how these girls are all still connected, because I definitely wonder at times, like, how are y'all even friends?
Like, what really connects y'all? And I think like I said, like, I think it really, that scene reminds you that Rue is the center of all of this, and everyone's connected to Rue in some way. You don't know how, but everyone's connected to Rue. And obviously Maddy and Rue have a strong enough connection where Maddy was able to see through the BS. And I think because she also knows Cassie so well, like, this is her best friend, so she's able to see through Cassie and look across the friend
Cassie, do not do dirt, sis, if you cannot lie, honey. She no, what is she talking about? She's high. Girl, you look high. What are you It was immediate. Like, immediately, Cassie, your cover is blown, mama. You might as well go ahead and lean into it. Maddy, I didn't mean to hurt you, but I fell for him. Like, I feel like Cassie should have really used her words, and now it's over. Like, you literally have a split second in the moment when you're outed to try to flip the narrative, and Cassie completely blew it. Hey, Ruru, just give it a few days. She's an addict.
Yes, like if you're in that situation and you have nothing else to hold on to, you're gonna like throw everything you can to like deflect. But girl, it was so bad. Like, damn, you can't even. Not a simple lie. Like, no, she's lying. Like, she couldn't even say that with a straight, clear voice. I was like, Cassie, it's over for you. And I was like, with Cassie, I didn't feel bad for her at all. Like in that scene, because I'm just like, what happened to all that energy? I thought you were crazier than Maddy. Like, what happened?
What happened, honey?
Give us the Harley Quinn energy. I thought you were crazier. And for her to run up them stairs like somebody stole her Valentine, I said, oh, girl, we have lost the plot. We have failed our mission. Cassie,
you were never about this life. You should have never gone down this path, sis. I felt Rue Mama in that moment. Oh yeah, you said what you said. Stand on what you said. You stand on what you said and did, Cassie. Stand on it.
What happened to the badassery? Like the whole scene was just, I was cackling. I have never laughed so hard during the show, and it was just so brilliant. The different beats in that one scene. It was amazing.
Truly. Now, we ain't going to get into how I don't think that Kat is being used to the best of her potential. But we got a couple words out of her in that scene. So we're going to go ahead and let it fly. But Sam, use Kat more. Use her better.
Do better. Do better by our sis, because it's upsetting me and my homegirls that
literally.
Kat this way. But we gonna let you have it.
We're going to let you have it because this episode was absolutely masterful. So through this diversion of like sliding Cassie and Nate right up under this bus and outing them for their relationship, Rue is able to escape and run off to have further antics as she is being almost crippled over with the withdrawal symptoms that are attacking her body right now. I did not know what to make of her being so lucid and aware that she rolls her behind up under somebody's garage, breaks into their house, subdues their dog, and steals jewelry and money. Like, I was just like, what am I watching? But I cannot stop watching.
Seeing her run through the streets at night, like I'm like watching GTA and like 40. Like I'm like, yo, she's literally a sim. Like, how is she able to do all of this? Like, she's holding on to her side more and more as she's running. It's like she done lost a kidney and she's still able to do all of these antics. Like, I'm telling you, like the streets were just in full destruction. Like, she was in full destruction mode in those streets. I don't know how she managed to steal jewelry and money out of someone's house, and she somehow manages to escape like freaking 5-6 cops, which that scene annoyed me. Just like, side note that like cops are literally gonna chase a young girl because she threw up on the side of the street. Like, really? Like, don't y'all have something else to do? This is what we be talking about. Y'all just don't be doing anything productive. Like, y'all over here harassing this, woman of color. Like, let her be. Like, she just threw up. Like,
right, she could be whole pregnant out here in these streets running from her parents, and then y'all want to call in backup in the rest of Jump Street to come and grab her. Like,
please give me a break. And look, and she ended up outrunning all y'all in the first place.
because all of y'all overweight and we're too busy eating at the moment anyway. Like,
right, the whole battalion for what? And y'all failed because she got away.
you failed. And so in this moment, I can't remember if she did this before she actually saw Fez, but Mm.
So it led her to this random couple's house in like suburbia or wherever. She found these two people leaving their house. So yeah, and Fez is another one who is tired of this girl's antics.
Fez is tired. Hell the no, Rue. He done told you already. Hell the no.
No, and it was just that small little beat of Fez that I think was powerful in its own right. Because Fez has been on this journey with her too, and it's just like you see all these people in her life who, like Gia and Lexi and Fez who are just like up to their wits end, like there's nothing that they feel like they can do for her at this point. And
literally, he's like, we're not doing this. Come on, we're not doing this. Period. That's a king right there.
That's a true gentle king where he knows exactly why she's there and exactly what it is because they've been through this before. And for him to have the wherewithal to be like, I'm not enabling you in this way anymore. I'm not doing this with you again. Like, and having her, him throw her out, it was the best thing he could have done. And it was like
literally.
So the way that they Sam set that up as well, like just the people that she's going to, and then you get to the end where she's just in complete desperation mode, and she goes to these random people's houses, or these random couples' house to steal their steal whatever she can get, and then she goes to
the Connect's house. So clearly you thought this out because you knew you couldn't go there completely empty-handed. So you think enough to break into someone's house, steal jewelry and money from them, evade the police, and still show up at the Connect's house. You might as well have taken yourself straight to a pawn shop, sis, and you need to be avoiding this monotone, deaf lady walking. Like, everything about this lady says she is not safe. So the fact that that is one of the places that Rue went to, I was just like, why do you want to die tonight?
I'm like, girl, you might as well walk into the police station and have yourself put in jail and like anything but dealing with that woman because that woman is scary. Like, period. I think we can all agree the consensus is that lady was about to sell Rue. That lady was about to put her in sex trafficking and sell her through the black market. I am convinced, and if Rue did not escape out that window like a whole GTA sim and run for her life by the hairs of her chinny chin chin, it was a wrap. Like, I fear like we were never gonna see Rue again. Because that lady is scary, and I just felt like, Rue, why would you go to this woman's house? You know you don't have this lady's money. You know you've been doing her drugs that she gave to you so you could sell them, not do them. And it's like, why would you go there? Why would you do that? Like, you want to die. Like, I know you're going through withdrawal, sis, but this ain't the way, Sway. Like, we don't want you to die. Like, please.
Not that, like, this is like giving a swift zap. And honestly, like, I do think, I'm not going to take away from the lady because she definitely nurtured her to a certain extent and she gave a lot more grace than I was expecting her to. But when Rue waking up the way that she did with everything locked, I was just like, oh yeah, she's going out to find the box that you're going to get put in so that your ass can be shipped out of here.
And there was actually a beat where I didn't think she was gonna make it out that window because old homeboy had woken up. So I was just like, oh my god, Rue, she's not gonna make it. She's not gonna make it. Where she does make it, she's gonna fall to her death, and this is where this is it. Like, this is where the show's gonna end. And Rue's gonna be reunited with her daddy. Like, I just felt like there's like multiple scenarios I could see of Rue's demise, and I don't want this for her. But
At all.
it was just like I didn't think that the episode was gonna end with her getting out alive, honestly. So
I didn't either. And like, just stopping there for a second, do you think that that is how this all ends? Like, is Rue going to keep going until she is reunited with her father? Like, is that what she's ultimately, like, subconsciously seeking? Because I feel like the episodes so far have been given that. Whether, her getting so high out her mind where she starts to have the visions of her dad and they're dancing, to all of the antics that she did in this episode and, like, literally put herself in harm's way numerous times. Like, at this point, you're not even doing all of this just to continue to get high. Like, are you just trying to kill yourself?
yeah, I mean, I'm like, there's like a couple scenarios where how I feel like this show might
It's
So much
definitely a
fun
little
right
shake.
now.
It's definitely a little shake happening.
Yeah.
I think that this episode is definitely the one that's going to silence the naysayers, or should have already silenced the naysayers, because, and I understand, like, I'm not necessarily one of those, but I mean, I was a naysayers for all of the pink peen that we were being exposed to, and
Girl.
overdone nudity that was unnecessary. I'm no prude, but I also just didn't need to see a whole bunch of shriveled up, you know what. But anyway,
Delivery. That. Okay,
um,
let's just. Okay.
but this episode to me, I feel like did such a beautiful job of authentically documenting the story of this particular addict and her experience, and combated all of the conversations around Euphoria is just a show glorifying drugs, sex, and violence amongst teenagers. Because if you watch this episode and you think that you want to do what Rue is doing, there's something wrong. There's definitely something wrong. But I do understand that we have seen the drug use, we've seen the sex seem like this appetizing thing prior to this episode, but then when we arrive here and we're like, oh no, this is actually what happens when with your brain on drugs.
Yeah, yeah. This is why we say don't do drugs, kids. And this is why. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Like anyone who watches this show, and especially this episode, and thought, yeah, this is what's up. This is where it's at. This is hot. Then yeah, you're right. The show isn't doing something right, and whatever messages you're picking up from the show, I don't think it's the show. I think it's more so where we are as a society, where yeah, we're sort of in the place where drugs and over sexualization, hypersexualization, and the toxic culture of sex in general, like that's something that has been normalized. Is This is what it's supposed to be. This is what we're seeing on Euphoria. This is what it's supposed to look like, and this is what kids at this age should be going through. And it's like not to this extent. So I think Euphoria they are, yeah, for all the stuff that we do have to say about it, because there are some things that aren't great about the show, and there are some writing inconsistencies, or visual inconsistencies, all of the stuff that we do have to say about Euphoria, which is valid. But I think ultimately this episode really just highlighted the true magic of Euphoria and what it's doing in the culture, and what it's doing, what it's representing for youth at this time. It's really, this episode really highlights the conversations that Euphoria is having, and it's doing it in a purposeful way, which is the whole point.
Yeah.
Where there are shows on right now that are doing the opposite, and when people are criticizing Euphoria for doing, there are other shows that are actually doing that. Um, so in no way in this episode was anything that Rue was going through glorified or exploited in a way that it's like, this is what you should be doing. This is glamorous. There's nothing glamorous about
Not a
the day at
one
all.
thing. Not near, not one of them cars made to look like, oh, I should go out here and get hit by a car tomorrow. No.
No, no. It's just not what it is. It's not glamorous. And there are depictions of addiction that are made to be very glamorous and, like, very one-dimensional, and don't go into the deep depths of the real, complexity and the destruction that it can cause. And it's not always as black and white as, oh, that person is just doing drugs and there's nothing we can do for them. And so often people who are going through addiction are thrown by the wayside. It's like, oh, you're in control of this. You can control this. This is your fault. It's a real disease and illness, and you know.
It is, but I am going to say, I think that you're 100% right, Naya. And Rue was really pushing it this episode.
She was. Listen, I'm not even gonna hold you. She
My
was.
God. I feel like Gia is on the brink of a nervous breakdown, and I want her to choose herself and her peace. But I would love to highlight Nia Love asks, what do y'all believe would make her want to be sober? Or do y'all think it's even possible? I feel like she's going to have to lose someone close to her. What are your thoughts on that, Naya?
I don't know, and I think that's the brilliance of this show, is you don't know really what's gonna be the thing to wake her up. I don't even think, obviously Rue struggle of addiction as is that there's multiple low points and rock bottoms, and I think it takes the person wanting, really, really wanting to get clean and really wanting to choose themselves in a better and healthy way and wanting their future rather than, this pill or this next high. But I don't know if, obviously, if she loses someone close to her like tomorrow, I'm sure that would have obviously a major impact, but it's hard to say that that would be the thing to shake her up.
I don't think that would be the thing. I think that would be the thing to push her further over the edge, because the first thing is losing her dad. It seems to be what we're alluding to or getting to in reference to the number one cause for her of why she's even in this place with her addiction anyway. Honestly, I feel like we're not going, or at least her loved ones can't wait for her to want to be sober. I think that the next steps are forcing her to be. I think that there were a ton of missteps with her coming right out of rehab and then going back into the life just as she had before. I know Naya and I have talked about this a lot when we looked at All American, and like the character on there, Olivia, while we don't see a deep dark dive in her journey of addiction and then recovery as we do with Rue in Euphoria, another thing that happened with her that kind of set up a perfect storm for her relapse was that she was put right back into the same circumstances in life that led to her to get to the place that she was with her addiction to pills to begin with. So I think that the next thing with Rue is not really going to be her wanting to do it. I think that she needs to be forced. I think that she needs to be placed in an environment and not removed from that environment that literally is devoid of drugs, devoid of alcohol, devoid of any additional stimulants that she can start to fill her addictive personality and the needs that come from it with. Because even with her return home, and she did pretty much relapse immediately, but I knew that her getting hooked on Jules immediately was going to be a problem. Like, her mother is going to have to, if she really wants her daughter to get well, not just act in a way of, oh, you need to go to the emergency room and go back to rehab in this way, but like, what does y'all's life now look like so that you can save your daughter? Because you cannot continue to live in this house, which is probably also a trigger. You cannot continue to maybe drive this car that might have been her dad's car. It could be a trigger. Like, you cannot continue to walk the life in the way that you were doing at the time before and during her, addiction and getting to the place where you initially sent her to rehab, and then send her off to rehab and keep placing her back in that place and expecting her to automatically be fixed or this time for it to work. So I don't know if that answers your question, but from my perspective is it has nothing to do with what Rue wants right now. The people who love her need to make the best decision for her and force her to do the things that's going to be the best for her.
Yeah, I agree. Like, even like just like the people that she's like leaned on so much, like a Fezco, who's like, I'm completely removing myself from this situation and I'm not going to enable you. Like, little like steps like that where the people in her life are forcing her to change and to get better, not because they're physically like forcing her, but in the way that they're moving. So changing the way that they move so that they are not enabling her in any way possible, to keep doing what she's doing. So yeah, I mean, what everything that Erica said, it has nothing to do with Rue at this point, what she wants. I think, you know, she can want to, deep down maybe get clean and feel like that's probably the best thing for her, but it's not even about that anymore. She's so in it and so deep and dark in it that she can't do it just because she wants to. Like, the power of that is not enough at this point. So.
Yeah, I don't see her summoning any drive or motivation to want to get clean, because I don't even see a drive or motivation for her to actually want to live.
Right. I mean, going back to that episode with Ali where she says, well, I'm not really planning on being here that long. That right there gave us the glimpse into, this is more than just I'm using to, maybe not process the grief and pain that I have of losing my dad.
Yeah, and I want to go to a place where we kind of discuss feelings. Like Naya and I were talking last night about just television and film, and specifically storytelling, and when it's done really really well, it makes you feel things. Like even with us going back over and breaking down the episode and talking about all of these things, I'm feeling all these emotions. Like I feel so deeply hurt that this character Rue is suffering in the way that she's suffering. So in turn she creates this chaotic environment and all of these additional hurtful actions towards all these other characters, putting myself within her mom's space and her sister's space, and like what does that actually feel like. And I literally wove through the entire episode jumping in and out of Rue and then everybody else and how they were responding to, or how the things that Rue was doing was landing on them. And one of the things that they talked about at the end, or like after the episode, is that Sam was really focused on empathy. um I definitely empathize with Rue because she is a person in the scope of this world that is deeply 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 hurt. And I could not imagine what life would look like carrying that type of pain, that kind of weight. um Naya, how did the episode make you feel?
I mean, I think it was deeply, deeply just devastating to see this young girl in this dark of a place. And it's not even, for all the things that we, joke about, and, Rue really was pushing the limits. Not only people in her life, but all of us. Um, it's not out of malice, and I think that's sort of the complexity of addiction. Is It's not as black and white as like these people are just sick, and they know what they're doing, and they're bad, and this and that. It's not black and white at all. There's so many different layers and just complexities of a person who's going through addiction, and then add on top of that being young, being in high school, and all of the pressures and anxieties you have to deal with as a teenager, as a young person trying to navigate this world, and then being in such deep pain and not having any tools to process that. And you see a young girl who just doesn't have any of the right tools to process any of her emotions in a healthy way. um, and she's just in pain. And you know, it was just really sad to see her in that state, and just with no way out. And then you see how it affects everyone else in her life, and it's not just, addiction's not just happening to this one person; it's happening to every single person um, who loves this person. And there's nothing that you can do for someone who is an addict but love them, and try to be there for them. But even that can be exhausting, and even that can be crippling. So it was just sad. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how else to say it. It was just really, really sad. And I think it had to be painful to watch, because you can only imagine how painful it is to go through in real life. And nothing about the performances felt forced or felt fabricated. It felt very real. At least one person's experience. Someone can say, "I know someone who has suffered from addiction. I've been there. I've seen it." That's one depiction, but I feel like it was very, very accurate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was done in a way that was really masterful, and in a way that addiction needs to be handled more when it comes to, if we're going to talk about it, then we need to talk about it. And it's not to glorify it or exploit it or to glamorize it. It's to really tell the story. Um,
Yeah.
and
And to give representation to people who like the rules that are out there, because they are out there. This is a television show, but there are thousands of rules, y'all.
yeah,
Thousands. And it might not be these exact sets of circumstances or situations that are playing out within all of these other people's lives, but like I grew up in Baltimore City. Crack is real. Like I have crackhead family or had crackhead family members. Like addiction is very much so real, and I like what you said, Naya, about how authentic, how they went about it, and I can't say anything other than how masterful it is. And then also going back to what you said about it's not necessarily black and white, because when this person is your loved one, it hits different. Like I know what it was like growing up and seeing um, family members come into my grandmother's house, and I had one family member in particular who contracted AIDS from using needles and being addicted, and it was something that we knew. And I was so young, but I remember being terrified to interact with him. Like just so terrified of him as his being and his disease and all of the things that were actually happening. And like that's a very real thing. So like when I see Gia, I see some of that. Like I see some of the fear that I had. I see certain things. And then like I said, going back to what you were saying about it not being black and white, you have this is someone's loved one, right? So like while we can look and sometimes be detached because we don't know somebody who's doing this, or we haven't experienced it, this is someone's loved one. But then also when you go back to her connect, I love that he included the part of the connect actually telling her like, yo, after a certain amount of time, studies have shown that addicts, your brains are rewired by the chemicals that you are actually intaking. So you no longer fear things that are going to hurt you. Things that feel good, you no longer register as feeling good. And that is something that physiologically, on a biological level, impacts you. So while you can be cognizant and have these devices and be able to be manipulative and have the goal of trying to get your next hit or make it out of this situation, you also have the biology working against you as you're going about your whole day to day, which, like you said, Naya, it just makes everything so much more complicated. And this episode of television took us on a deep dive into the day in the life of an addict teen, and it really blew my mind. And honestly, it scared me. I'm still scared now when I think about certain beats and certain moments, like thinking about being a mother of an addict and watching how her mother played in the scenes, terrified. Seeing how Gia is responding and what is this going to mean for her life, like you mentioned earlier on in this video. I'm terrified. Watching, like, while I don't think that Jules does not love Rue, I do believe that they might be each other's first loves. What the hell does that look like when your first love is an addict and decides to pull out any and everything verbally that she possibly can to destroy you? And she literally knows everything that could possibly destroy you. Like, the episode was heavy. Let me just stop there.
It was heavy, yeah, and I think, Rue, from all the moments that we are so frustrated with her, and she infuriates us to no end, and it just feels like Rue throw the whole character away. I think as human beings, if we're able to empathize with a character like Rue, and maybe you can't connect to her being an addict, but if you can just connect to her being a young girl in pain, and we all know what it's like to be in pain and feel pain, um, and to feel
Truly. You
truly
can
in
sub in
pain.
anything for drugs. Like,
Yeah,
who out there is having sex to not feel unloved? Who out there is overeat? Like, I'm a stress eater. Like, there's so many things. Like, wow. And it's not to trivialize the idea of addiction at all, but like just going to your point, Naya, of being able to empathize with people and put yourself in their position. It's various degrees of exactly what we're seeing play out within Rue and her addiction life that's happening in everyone's life. But go ahead,
right.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, we live in a society where, we were talking about this last night, where it's there's so many different messages being put out there, especially when it comes to this generation. I mean, it's thankfully I grew up in a generation where social media, um, by the time I was in middle school, that's where it really started to pop off. But even I didn't grow up in the time of social media. I grew up in a time still where my depression, sorrow, pain, just as much as we celebrate the good, the happiness and the joy and the comedy and the, euphoria. Because I think so often those darker emotions are seen as bad, and those are, sort of demonized, and we're not supposed to feel any kind of sadness of any kind, because God forbid. Um, Rather than it be uplifted, just those emotions be uplifted just as much as if we experience happiness and joy. I think it's important for shows like Euphoria to keep doing exactly what they're doing, and the show's very dark, and I think it needs to be dark, because unfortunately kids this day and age are going through a lot of these themes, and they might not be as extreme, but I mean, it's hard being young
It
in
is.
this day and age. It's really just hard to survive. So the amount of emotional trauma, there's such a lack of emotional connectivity within us as human beings, and what we're supposed to feel and how we're supposed to feel, and you're not supposed to feel like this, and to have shows like Euphoria, I think, celebrates being at your darkest point, being at your lowest point, being the worst version of yourself, because that's important to show, because no one's happy and a happy person all the time, is important. So I think just a show like Euphoria is important, and what they're doing is important, and episodes like this reminds me that what they're doing on the show is meaningful, and this episode, I think, will reverberate throughout TV history for forever. It's just that good. And there's just some topics and conversations that need to be had, and Euphoria is having them, and thank God for that, because in a day and age where a lot of things are just not talked about, and are just cast aside, and we're just sort of expected to operate as robots in this day and age where there's just no empathy, no one has any empathy for anyone else, no one cares about anyone else. To have shows like Euphoria really tap back into the humanity of us and how complex it is, and we're not black and white, and everything's not black and white.
Yep.
Most things aren't black and white. The things that we go through as human beings, is important. So
And even on the surface level, all of your entertainment is not going to always make you feel good.
no, no,
That last night's episode, I had a moment with the whole Cassie thing of laughing, but for the most part, I was in distress the entire episode. And I'm not mad at it because, like you said, we need things that's going to help us feel, make us feel in a time where they're trying to brainwash us into thinking that we're only supposed to feel good things, or we're suppress and ignore the things that don't necessarily aren't good or feel good or seem good and all of that. Naya, this has been such a wonderful talk. Before we get off of here, I would love to deep dive or like just touch upon actually where do you see all of the other characters going now that we have seen episode 5 and Rue has kind of like planted little nuggets of what the in their lives in this episode.
oh Lord. Um, well, obviously, I mean, the obvious thing that we're probably going to see in the next episode and coming up is how the aftermath of the Cassie and Nate bomb, and how that affects Cassie and Maddy's friendship moving forward, how that affects Maddy and Nate's relationship going forward. Like, it's all the question of what is Maddy going to do? She has information. We saw immediately her outburst, and her rage, but we didn't get to follow that. So
Cause I'm gonna need more king and queen things, okay?
Period. Like, where are my king and where's my king? Like, I mean, my king and my queen. I need them. But that, and then, I mean, how does Rue move forward? I mean, that's just like a real. I think that's like the overall. It's the continuing theme. Is like, how do any of these relationships begin to, like, how do you pick up the pieces of any of that? Like, Rue has a whole plate of just destruction in front of her, and how does she even begin to pick up the pieces of her relationships? Um,
Are
yeah, I mean,
Jules and Elliot gonna be a thing?
thing like Nate and Cal. Like, are we gonna see Cal go to jail for his crimes? Are we gonna see him? I don't know. Find his one true love and fraud. I don't know. Or what's gonna happen with Cal and Nate, and so it's all very interesting. I'm excited to see all of it. I don't know what's gonna happen. Um, I can only imagine.
What are you looking forward to?
What I look forward to. I don't know if there's anything specific. I think I'm just looking forward to more of what we saw in episode 5. I want more of the content and the substance and the purpose we had in episode 5, because it's been shaky with these first 5 episodes, and I think I just want more of that feeling that I had watching episode 5 and just seeing these characters deal with what they're dealing with, and just seeing, I think, the growth and how they try and manage to work through all of that. I think it's just what I'm looking forward to. Just more human storytelling, like we see in episode 5.
I want to see Oklahoma, so come on with it, Lexi. But
Yeah.
I think I'm most looking forward to seeing what Gia is going to do.
Mm,
That is what I want to see. What happens now for Gia?
yeah.
Because you're right. There's everyone else. There's no telling. And in all honesty, a lot of them are on their own destructive paths. Even our King Fezco,
Mm,
like, bro, Ashtray killed somebody, and there's people sniffing around. Like,
sniffing
those
around.
chickens are gonna come home to roost. Like, you still got Faye here, and she didn't beat up the manager of this. Like, there's so much happening there. Lexi, you're about to go tell everybody's business in this play, and you've been watching this entire time. And what does that actually look like? So there's so much up in the air. But I feel like the only person who is not necessarily a variable about what's going to happen next is just how quickly she moves through it. I cannot wait to see what Gia's detachment looks like and how she chooses to put her life vest on first and save herself and gets out of the tsunami that is Rue.
Yeah, I mean, and are we gonna get the space to see that? That would be nice to see her, to see that cast a light on Gia, because we just, she's so often just the one going
Yeah.
through all the pain in the background. We know that she is in pain and she's tired, but all of the focus is on Rue. Um,
And she lost her
so
daddy too, Rue.
she lost her dad, and that's the thing. Like, so, like, when I think about the way that, obviously, the dad's death is a real part to play in Rue's, anguish, 100%. But obviously, we can all agree that there are other issues. There are other things happening within that it's all a calm culmination. So it's not just her dad dying and her never really processing that. It's her anxiety. It's all this stuff. Um, mashed up together. But it's like, when she's always the go-to is to always bring up, I'm in pain. My dad died, and I think also in this episode it was highlighted that that was also a manipulation tactic as well, to use that because that's the easy go-to. Um, so I think it also highlights that that's not the only issue that's happening within Rue. That's not the only turmoil that she's going through. I think it's easy to use that, because it's just, everyone knows, it's common knowledge that their dad died, and that was painful. But I think it was very much used as a manipulation tactic, and it's like, also, Gia lost her dad too. How does that affect her? How has she been dealing with that? And, like, the most important person, I think, after her dad, after the dad, is Rue. And I think, if anything, Rue and Gia have a stronger and more powerful connection that I think maybe Gia and her dad did, because I think Gia was young, still
Mm-hmm.
young, I think, when the dad died. So Rue obviously had that strong connection with the dad, but I think Rue and what Rue and Gia have is very powerful. So I think
Yeah.
I think she really is the key, and in some ways, I feel like she is the key to Rue's unlocking something in Rue, whether it's her complete and total destruction, or maybe it's her saving grace in a way. I think Gia is the key. It's just how does Gia unlock that? And
right.
The way that she moves, how does that influence how Rue
yeah
moves?
I love that, and I agree. I think that she is going to be the key, and it's going to be the key not necessarily directly to her sobriety, but to Rue's will to live, because that's what we need to get to. At this point, we don't even need to get her to not want to do drugs anymore. We need to get her to not want to, we need to get her to want to live.
Yeah, because the drugs are just a tool. I mean, if you're at the point where you don't even want to live and exist in this space, then it's beyond just the drugs.
Yeah.
It's like, no, she does not value her life. So how do we get to a place where she sees value in her future and wants to live? That's the thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Anything else that we didn't touch on, Naya? Thank you so much for getting on here and chatting with me. You're always so game. I'm just like, I am so blessed.
Listen, I love this conversation. It makes me feel good. But yeah, no, I mean, I feel like we said everything needed to be said. This episode was amazing, and all I have to say is y'all better just send Zendaya her Emmy right now, and we don't even need to do
any of the for your consideration. We don't need to do any of the campaigning. Just go ahead and get them pressed now. Have it to her in the next 3 weeks, please. Like, just.
It just is what it is. Like, sorry to all the condolences to all the nominees. We'll lose. But
my condolences.
My condolences. This episode deserves an Emmy.
And we only 2 months into the year. It's just like, I don't even know what to do with myself.
It's so funny, like, us watching this episode and being like, she's about to win an Emmy. Like, we can see, like, she's going to win an Emmy for this. Like, just knowing the moment where you know someone's going to win an Emmy for something. This was it. This whole episode, I was like, the whole 15 minutes deserves, like, 3 Emmys. I mean, I'm just saying.
The whole thing. Zendaya, thank you. Because I could only imagine what that wreaked on your body, what the physicality, the emotional, the mental places that she had to go to with that. Thank you. Y'all, this has been a wonderful conversation with my good friend Naya, who has been a part of this community and just has been such a godsend. I'm so grateful for her. Y'all will never even understand how grateful I am. Thank you, Naya. I will be back, of course, with my episode breakdowns next week. We will also be working on some live rewatches and watches of other series. Google Mbatha-Raw, who is both Naya and Ara's favorite, has a new series coming out, I think, the end of this week. So look out at ericavane.com on any of your favorite social media platforms for the announcement of that. We're going to be live watching some shows, and you can follow Naya __ Naya Love. I'm going to link Naya in the description box so that you guys can follow her. Her feeds on Twitter and on Instagram are absolutely amazing. She's always serving up great inspiration, aspiration, good vibes, and positive energy. And you're going to want to make her your little digital friend as well. So go ahead and follow her. I will link her in the description box down below. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you watch live, if you're catching this on the replay, make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you made it all the way to the end of this video. Like the video and then turn on your bell notifications so that you don't miss any of my content. Until next time.